Shalom, people. This is Brother Lyles coming at you with another video. And I got my lovely wife with me this time. Uh,
Shalom.
and we just want to talk about our visit to the National Museum of African American History and Culture last weekend. Since we don't celebrate Thanksgiving, we decided about a month or so ago that we was gonna go to the museum because my wife and me had been wanting to go since it opened a couple of years ago, and she had been wanting to go to D.C. also. So took two of our sons, we loaded up, and we left, um, and we was there for in D.C. for 3 days, and it was quite an experience. And in fact, I would say if you decide to go, if you want to be able to see everything and really take in everything, I would say you should, if you go, you should plan on being there for at least 2 days, maybe three, depending on the
Three.
crowd,
Okay.
because we was really shocked at the amount of people. First, because it was Thanksgiving, that's next to Christmas. That's one of the major holidays that people go home or whatever. So we was kind of shocked to see as many people there in D.C. as there was, you know. Um, but also the fact that the the museum, we was just shocked about the amount of people that was there for the museum, which we're gonna get into that. But uh, the website that I went to for the hotel, they had a pretty reasonable deal. So I told my wife, let's do 3 days. So I'm glad we did do that because I was thinking it was gonna be like maybe 2 days. But the first the first day we got there, you know, DC itself, it was quite a few people out, even though it was kind of cold. And the location of the museum is right in front, well, not right in front of the Washington Monument, but it's right off to the, I guess you would say, the left of it. You can see it's about a football field away from the Washington Monument, and the design. I got my T-shirt that I bought there, and if you can see that, that's the design. That's how it looks. It looks just like that. The design of it. I don't know. In my mind, it kind of reminds you of a kind of a arc, kind of
Mm-hmm.
a art type building, like it's holding something, and it is holding
Sure.
something.
Yeah.
It's holding our history and whatever pieces of culture that we have accumulated while we here. So we got in, and I'm gonna start. I'm gonna let my wife, give her observations on what she saw. But when we first got, there, you got to go through the security. It's not uh, bad. They just make you, put everything in the basket, and just run it through the metal detector or whatever, and then you go with. We went over to the information desk so that we could, get kind of uh, guided because we was gonna do we was just ourselves. We wasn't there with a group, and we didn't ask for a guided tour. I think you can, if you have large groups, you can get guys that will take the whole group through. But we wanted to be able to take everything in. So what they told us at the desk, they said you need, if you want to go in a chronological order from the time that we got here in slavery, you start at the bottom and work your way up. And it was kind of um, I don't know what you would say, what's that word? Kind of relating to the way we came over here. Is you had to go down these escalators to get down to the bottom. And as you was going down, at least in my mind, I was thinking about how the slaves, when they was in Africa, how they was going down into the belly of the ships. And so when you get well, actually, when you got down there to the bottom, that's not the bottom. When you go down the escalators, you gotta go through the room to the exhibit room. So you go on the escalators and you go down, and then you go into the exhibition. And the exhibition is the first three levels. Those are the main ones you want to look at. The exhibition, that's the exhibits. That's the ones where they collected stuff from all around the world dealing with us, and they put it on display. A lot of it is on loans, which we're gonna get to that. But you go into that, it's a line, and it was because the first day it wasn't that bad. We was able to go straight in there, and then they have an elevator, a big elevator, like a freight elevator that everybody. Well, I'm skipping. I'm going too fast. Okay, when you get into the exhibition entrance, they got this mural, and we took pictures of it. And it has pictures of different things or whatever of our past or whatever. And then you go around the corner, and there's an elevator that takes you down to the bottom, and that's where it begins. I'm gonna let my wife talk about how she felt about going, and then we'll go through the going through the exhibitions.
Well, when we got there, I know it was going to be exciting and everything, but I didn't have no idea how it would be set up. I just thought it'd be level after level after level, but it was more like you were going through a maze. And we got on the escalator. They had a lot of pictures from every era on there. Just the whole wall was filled up with it, and it was just so amazing to see the transitioning from one period to another period, from the past to the future. So you went down, and as you was going down, you felt like, you said, like you're going down in the bottom of a ship. That's what it put me in mind of the way they started it off. And it's like it felt like it was a cave or a dungeon. I can't explain what it felt like. Even though the things that you saw in there was amazing, but the feel when you were going down there, it felt like you were going down into like a dungeon, or better yet, the bottom of a ship. But when we first got there, they had different displays on there, starting off from where they got on the ship and how they were sold and who sold them, and it even showed the money that they used, the currency that they were using at that time. I guess it was 600, 1600, 1700.
Different eras for different during the slavery period. That came later, but what she's talking about, the different eras, is when we got on the elevator. As you got it's like a big freight elevator, and it was big enough to hold at least 20 people comfortably. And as you went down, it's glass, encased in glass elevator, and you would see they would have the dates going all the way down to when we the first blacks got here to the New World, which was the 1400s. So when you got down to that bottom, it started in Africa. It talked about stuff in Africa. It showed you actual pictures, paintings, and it had resources that you could go to later to read, like, okay, these were the kings in Africa, right? And this is the kingdoms, and then they talked about how these kingdoms did trade with the Portuguese and the Spanish and whatever. So it didn't go in really in depth about Africa, but it gave you the understanding that, okay, this is where these people started off at. They started, and these are some of the kingdoms, and they had a lot of projection screens and little videos and stuff that was talking you through, and I mean it was very
Awesome.
educational,
Mhm.
and it was very, you know, intriguing, grabbing your attention. So we took quite a few pictures.
A
Um,
lot.
uh, Video, I probably would have ran out of video space on my phone if I would have tried to videotape. I did do two two little short videos, but anyway, yeah, it, we went in chronological order. So when you got there, it started with that, and then it started working. As you kept going, you would just
Different
work your
eras. Yeah.
yeah, and they had exhibits. They had, and what it is was they went all around the world to these different private collections and asked these people, hey, could we get this for our museum? So you will see on maybe if something was encased in glass, it was the actual article. It said on loan from such and such
Mhm.
collection or whatever on loan. So this was actual stuff collected
People.
in one area, and like I said, starting off, it talked about Africa. Then it talked about the trading. Then it showed you how some of the stuff that they would trade for the beads. They actually had actual bead, the
Yeah.
actual copper
Absolutely.
shells and beads that they said that the Africans would get for giving the slaves,
Mhm.
and they went through the whole 9 yards about how they, it started with that, and then it just picked how it started with the Portuguese and the Spanish, then how the English got into it, then how the French. It gives you numbers,
Mhm.
gives you the numbers of how many slaves each country
Mhm.
enslaved, and I was just shocked
Mhm.
that as small as Spain and Portugal
Yeah.
was, they
Small.
were the one that exported outside of
Most.
Islam.
Yes.
Outside of Islam, because we know Islam has has enslaved way more African people than anybody has. In fact, the Arab slave trade was going on hundreds of years before the
Exactly.
transatlantic. But this was just about the transatlantic. It didn't have nothing in there about the Islamic slave trade. I guess you could probably do a whole museum on that, you know, for yourself. But it Spain and Portugal enslaved at least I say close to 6 million slaves that
Mhm.
they exported out. Then England, France, France was like 1.7, but it had all this in there. It had actual shackles, the actual shackles.
Mhm. With the
These were,
balls hooked to it.
yeah, go ahead.
But as I was saying earlier, they had slave money showing you the wealth that the
Mm-hmm.
slaves had and how it built their economy, which was built on the backs of our people.
Yes.
The, the slaves were in, it was what the slaves were, it was like gold in their
Yeah.
terms, you know, how
Yeah,
much
we
the
were
money
worth
was.
our weight in gold.
Right.
And that's probably where that term come from. You're worth your weight in gold
And they had the actual slaves on there,
on the money.
and it was like, wow. So for
Yeah.
them to say they don't owe us nothing, this country was built literally on our backs, and the money is a witness, a
Yeah.
testimony against when what they have been
Yeah.
saying or what they want
Yeah.
us to believe.
Yes. So the bottom floor deal with the us uh, coming going into slavery, during slavery, during the Revolutionary War. It
Mm-hmm.
had it, and I like what it does with the different wars that America has participated in. It shows you our contribution,
Mm-hmm.
undisputable facts that
Mm-hmm.
every war that this nation has fought in,
We had
the
a part
tide
in
was
that.
turned by us becoming part of
Mm-hmm.
the armies. It shows where during the Revolutionary War, at the beginning, there wasn't any, participation of us because obviously we was enslaved. But then, as either side wanted to gain the advantage, it had this interactive video talking about it. Said they reluctantly turned to the slaves to try to bargain with them that if you fight, we'll give you your freedom. And so they had these paintings, they had these, the videos and everything. And it was this one painting, and I told my wife I gotta get this painting. It was of this British army. They was fighting against, I guess, Americans or whatever, and they had this. They called him a loyalist. The name of it was the Death of Major Payne or something. But it was this black guy that was fighting on the side of the British. He had a British outfit on. He had a little afro, and he had his gun, his little long, and he had his little feather in his head, and he was sticking that rifle out. And he was all like, man, and you could see the British officers. He was pointing to him and showing them where to shoot. And I said, man, I bet you some of them slave masters probably seen him and said, oh my man. I mean, he looked like he was doing some serious damage, boy. Yeah. Then they had another painting of this black guy. He was with British Army. He was on horseback, and they were fighting. They was fighting on horseback. So he had his little musket, his little gun. And he was out there. I'm telling you, man, it was like, and they said us entering the war turned the tide for the Americans. See, they don't tell you that. They tell you about the slaves that left to fight for the British to get their freedom. But also America also had let slaves fight on their side and told them that they would get their freedom. And apparently they said what happened afterward, of course, they reneged. But they turned to them to help them stem the tide against the British. So you seen that, and then it talked about different peoples during that time, like the Gullah Geechee people, which my wife is Gullah. It talked about the rice, importance of rice. It talked about the importance of sugar. It talked about the importance of cotton. Then it talks about the fact that one of the major ways outside the cash crops that they made money was breeding slaves. Breeding, for money. That was in many ways more lucrative than the cash crops, especially this one exhibit, which I was surprised that they were actually, that's one thing I liked about the museum. It was candid in the facts that they presented. They had this one exhibit talking about the fancy girls, and apparently they had these breeding farms where they were breeding female slaves for the purpose only of sexual exploitation, or basically rape. They was whoever they was breeding them there and they called them fancy girls, and they said in the exhibit it said they was bred for sexual exploitation by men and women, which kind of gives you an understanding of what slavery must have been like. It was just a sexually debauched time, and I believe this is another reason why it was a reluctance for them to give it up, because it was just whatever you wanted to do.
Pleasure for them.
Whatever, and it talks about the different ways that they implemented laws to, because apparently what happened was the British or the English, when they came here, it was some slaves that after they had served their time, they allowed them to get out of the slavery. And I think we talked about this when we went to Jamestown, when we did our video on Jamestown, that they changed the laws to make slavery for black people perpetual, meaning you will never get out of it. They actually had to change the law because they were, it seemed like, giving some of the slaves their freedom. along with indentured slave, but then somewhere along the line they changed it and said no, you're not gonna get your freedom. You're gonna be a perpetual slave, and your children gonna be perpetual slaves. So they changed that. So I'll let my wife.
And also the most valuable Bible they had was Nat Turner Bible. Um, I don't know how they got a hold of that, but it was amazing to see that. And as you came around the corner, they showed Harriet Tubman and Sojourner Truth and a couple more
Yeah,
women.
Articles of clothing, actual articles.
Her dress, and I was like, well, the women was so fit back then.
And this is what my wife always say, and it's true. She said, "How is it that all this stuff is not that we as the people that doesn't belong to us? All these things that they had in the museum belong to these either private collections or maybe collections from other museums. It was not something that we or maybe." In some instances, stuff was donated by descendants of the families, but I'm saying for the most part, a lot of the stuff was not owned. It was owned by rich people or other museums and stuff that I would have never thought existed. Like, why was we made aware a long time ago that this stuff existed? I think maybe it did, but when you put it all together in one place, that makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And then all the information, like I said, it had, you could read at the bottom of the exhibit. It would tell you, different things. So, and then it had lifelike statues. I like it had the statues of the guy that led the Haitian Revolution. It talked about how the Haitian Revolution had influenced America's fight against Britain, because at the time, the colonies or whatever was still under British control. It had, like my wife said, actual articles of clothing of people. I think it had something that belonged to Frederick Douglass. I forgot what it was. It was something that belonged to him. They had just different articles, the actual articles. Then it had these like cabins. They had these actual cabins that they had broken down and reassembled inside of the museum. Actual slave cabin.
Now they had one where you could go in there. It was a pretty nice size.
Yeah.
But then there was this other one that was falling apart. But it still was amazing to see it. Like it was
to touch it.
A one room cabin in the front. Maybe like 7 feet. And then the back part was maybe like 5 feet where they had like a room. But it was like so amazing to see that, and it helped you kind of connect to how they were living and what they were going through, even though we know it was so many conditions and weather that they had to deal with: rain, wind, storm, snow.
If they got a chance to rest anyway. And it even, it would tell you, the terrible conditions they were living in. And
they even had it where they had the actual block.
Yes, the slave auction block. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
To be sold, they actually had the actual block. Now, who got a hold of
block.
that?
Yeah.
Who actually has that? I don't know.
Yeah.
But you'd be surprised what people will buy up. And then the thing about who is holding our collections, it makes you think sometimes.
Yeah.
Who are the people actually?
They had a whip. They had an actual whip.
Yeah.
It was encased in glass, and they had a little picture beside it showing the taskmaster whipping the back of the slave. That the first floor, like I said, if it's not crowded. So you gotta make sure it's not crowded, because you almost get in a lot of the was it the third day we went? The second day, And when we went back, my wife had wanted to go back to take a picture of something, and it was so crowded.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, it was like really, really, really crowded, and you get in that line, you don't want to be bumping in, and because
and everybody want to take time to look at
yeah,
it and read stuff.
yeah.
So the
So
group
you have to wait.
behind you
You
is
have to
waiting to
wait.
go forward.
Yeah.
There's another group waiting to go forward, but then they have to be careful because there's people coming back.
Coming back to look at stuff. So it's best to try to go in an off season if you can. That's what we was thinking. Thanksgiving that it wouldn't be nobody there. The first day, unfortunately for us, it wasn't as many. It was still a lot to us. But another thing that was surprising to me, we're gonna get to the second floor. But the thing that was surprising to me was it was a whole lot more. It was more people of other races there than it was us.
And they were rushing to get in there. I was like,
I couldn't believe it.
Wow, our museum is very fascinating to them. I mean, they were rushing to go through the line.
Yeah.
We were way back walking. They got on the train, and we looked. They were just basically running to get in there. It was like Chinese people.
White
Spanish
people,
Oriental
all
people,
kinds of people, Indians, all kinds of people was in there, Jewish people.
Yes,
it was a lot in there looking at that, and I was like, man, I hope they looking not to empower themselves that, oh man, yeah, we really put a number on them. But you could kind of see some of them, they did have a look of, oh man, we did some really wicked stuff. You could look at their face, but then some of them you could tell they was like, oh, that wasn't me, that wasn't my, they had that kind of look like, I ain't have nothing to do with that, but yeah, you probably did.
But then there were some were in amazement of how we overcame it and the things we did and the inventions that we did and how we overcame them beating us and
and how we played major parts in those wars. I want to get back to that. The Civil War, it talked about that. Over 100,000 black soldiers fought on both sides. And now, of course, the ones that fought in the Confederate, they had to go there with their masters when their masters went. So they wasn't actually on the field with guns, but they was bringing the food and setting up the camps and stuff for the Confederate soldiers. But on the Union side, they had well over 100,000 that helped them turn the tide, and they had the highest casualty rate in the Civil War. So when you ever hear them say, well, we fought a war for you, well, we fought in that war that you talking about.
Did it show, I'm not sure because they have a lot of stuff in there. Did it show some of our people fighting on the Confederate side too?
No.
Did I not? Okay.
Like I said, if you a master and you going to war, you got slaves, you gonna bring them because back in wars back that time, a lot of times you might have to supply your own food or whatever. So you're gonna have these slaves that's gonna come and do certain things to make things a little bit better for the rich slaveholders that fought on the Confederate side.
Yes.
Right. But yeah, it was, to read that and to read how they was denied, they wasn't getting paid, all kinds of stuff. It was just crazy. But they had the actual pictures. They had the stories. And then the thing they did about Harriet Tubman, they talked about, of course, her contributions and and so that was the first floor. We would run out of time if we tried to tell you everything. You had to go see.
You have to go.
See.
Please come.
So with the second floor, what was on the second floor? We went up to the second floor.
Transition from slavery to what was the next era? Reconstruction.
Yeah, Reconstruction.
Yeah.
Yeah, Reconstruction, and then this it talks about it talked about green. It talked about all the stuff we were starting to contribute to the nation.
And how we had slaves that transitioned from being a slave to
congressmen
senators.
and stuff like that. The Freemen's Bureau. Um, it talks about how they rewrote the
Yes.
Constitution for all states to help not just black people, but to help all people.
Yeah.
But how systematically it was being dismantled by the plantation owners that now ex-plantation owners, but that now was being and understand this out because slavery ended, these slave owners were paid reparations for the fact that they didn't have their slaves anymore. They were paid, and this is getting off the subject a little bit. Remember the videos, we don't want to go over too much, but me and wife just seen an article where it says up until 2015, England had been paying the descendants of the slave holders in their colonies when they abolished slavery. They've been paying them reparations all the way up until 2015. I think they said they made the last payment in 2015. And if they done it, then you know America is doing that too. That they actually
they don't
paid.
Have no money for us.
They actually paid the descendants of the slaveholders reparations for them losing their slaves.
No money for us.
So if you think for one moment that the main purpose of Lincoln of fighting the Civil War was to free us, then and it even said that in one of the exhibitions, going back to the first floor, it said that in the exhibition that Lincoln said, there'll be no doubt in your mind that the freeing of the slaves is not my main consideration. The main consideration is to keep the Union together. See, I don't really I'm not losing any sleep over the fact that the slaveholders have slaves. I'm losing sleep over that they might part from the Union, and we need the Union to stay intact.
Yes.
And so, yeah, the Reconstruction was both enlightening but also sad because we was given a chance and we showed that we could be a contribution to this nation, you know, without turning around and, you know, like they was fearing, oh, the slaves are gonna take vengeance against the whatever, and they're gonna go around raping and robbing and all this. No, it wasn't like that. They was contributing. They was, you know, they was doing, you know, what they could to try to help the country come back. But they didn't. First of all, they didn't get the 40 acres and a mule like they said that it was. But then when they was making gains, it was all snatched from underneath them in order to, you know, appease the ex-plantation owners who, with the money that they still had, was not allowing the slaves to get up on their feet, except they signed their life away with the sharecropping deals that they had. They had, a lot of them had to do in order to take care of their families. But I think on the second floor it also talked about them going out west, to the frontier. I think that was on the second floor, if I can remember. Okay, yeah, and then on the second floor, was that where the Emmett Till? Yeah, the Emmett Till thing was on the second floor. That was.
I think that was in the third.
Was it the third?
Because he said you better do it today, or you won't be able to do it. Yeah, because he went up to fourth and fifth.
It was the second floor.
Okay.
It was the second floor. I remember now because that was the first day we got up there, and you can't take no pictures there. They tell you get caught taking pictures. They'll put you out of the family requested, and they don't have his body in there obviously, of course, but they got the actual casket, and they got the Yeah, they got that in there, and it was showing that, and it was just basically showing the Jim Crow, us coming out of
Mhm.
slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow,
Mhm.
segregation, and all the basically the hard times that we had coming out of slavery. It showed was Greenwood? No, Greenwood was the that was the third floor. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
They were showing also the actual tower that they looked over
That was the
slaves or the
that was
Jim Crow
yeah, we're talking about the slave the chain gangs that
chain
they
gang.
slave leasing. Yeah, slave leasing. Yeah.
Mhm.
And Angola was one of the ones. Angola was started way back during right after I guess the Civil War or whatever,
Mhm.
and when they came up with the convict leasing. So Angola prison in Angola, Louisiana has been around a long time.
Oh yeah.
So what they was doing, they was showing the chain gang, and they was talking
Mhm.
about how you know how we got to mass incarceration. It tells you the population of blacks that's in slavery. It showed all of that stuff. That was on the second floor, I think it was.
Yeah.
Then when we got to the third floor, that was
Civil rights.
civil rights era. Yeah, that was the civil rights era. It talked about us moving out of the south into the north, or
Mhm.
some of us moving out of the south and to the west.
Mhm.
Some of us moving all the way over to Africa with Marcus Garvey. It talks about
Yeah.
people like that. Those exhibits about the Black Panthers. Muhammad Ali had this little short excerpts about that. And I like this one exhibit. It was talking about the great northern migration of blacks because of lynching
Mhm.
into the northern cities, and it was showing this one. It was just showing how once we got up there, we was doing it. We was doing our thing. I mean,
Mhm.
we was getting it, and this is where you know that we are the people, because coming out of slavery in less than 100 years, you had artisans, you had cities, you
Mhm.
had Greenwood,
Mhm.
you had banks, you had insurance companies, you had inventions. We was making a big contribution. We was making gains, but they didn't like that, and they went about to systematically stop it. But it was just one picture they showed of this black couple in Chicago that had
Mhm.
came up, I guess, from the south, and they was in one of those little Model T cars, because it was like I guess around the 1900s or whatever. And the man and the woman, both they was dressed fine. Both of them had full length
Had
fur coats.
fur coat,
Listen to me,
dressed to the nine.
but man, I'm telling you, we
Looked
was
sharp.
showing that what we could do, and they wasn't having it. They wasn't having it. But then it talks about our contribution in World War One.
Mhm.
It talks about our contribution in World War Two. It
Mhm.
talks about the Pullman
Mhm.
porters. It
Yeah.
talks about the NAACP forming of it. Then it goes into popular culture with the Ebony magazine, Jet magazine. It talks about the Chicago Defender. It
Mhm.
talked about the Black Panthers, and it gives you some. It actually has some stuff from artifacts from them of Bobby Seale, and it's I mean it's really I said that, and I think that was the second day that we got to that level. We
Yeah.
stopped on the second level the first day. That's as far as we could go, because it opens up at 10:30 and it closes at 5:30. So we
Mhm.
stayed there as long as we could. So we finished the first two levels the first day. Then the second day we started back with we started with part of the second, and then we worked our way to the third floor. The
Yeah.
the the second, but we ended up having to leave. We ended up having to leave because
Got
it
there
was so
early.
crowded. They had to shut some of the exhibits down for like 20, 30 minutes to get the crowds to go through. So we, after a while, I just told him, I said, let's go. But I did forget. Let's go back to the first day. The first day, that was Thanksgiving Day, so they were serving food that day. So we went. I told my wife, I said, well, we can just go to they got a cafeteria there, and the food was delicious. I loved it. It was I loved it. I can't speak for everybody, but I think it was decent. Now, of course, you in D.C. You in Washington D.C. and it is very expensive. So yeah, I mean it's just the way it is. But the food was good. I would recommend it. They had the traditional Thanksgiving if you wanted that, but then they had fish. Then they had the southern basic southern meal with the collard greens, macaroni and cheese, fried chicken. But then they had some other stuff too, seafood and whatever. I let my wife speak on
Yeah, I
that.
tried something different. It had spinach,
Mhm.
apples,
Yeah.
and onions in there. I was like, well, let me try it. It was different. It was real crunchy.
Mm.
It was different.
Yeah.
But I had gotten the fish. It was okay.
Yeah.
And you had sweet potato.
I had fried chicken.
Did you get sweet potatoes?
Nah, I don't. No, I didn't get it. But we got the red velvet cake,
Yeah,
the fried chicken, the macaroni and cheese, collard greens, and the collard greens didn't have any.
You got potato salad today.
Yeah.
Yeah, you let us taste it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was good. It was good, and so that the second day, like I said, we had to just leave because it was just too crowded. We just got the lines was just out of this world, and like again, I was like really shocked, like I told my wife. So then we came back the third day, and we started back. We started with the third floor, and at the third floor was what was that? Yeah, that was dealing with popular culture.
Yeah.
You know,
They had one with the
television.
50s when people were
Yeah.
writing and said, don't eat from people that don't hire you.
Yeah.
We had the era with the black fists up. I mean, y'all remember that.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
time period.
Yeah, and
Black power.
then the fourth floor, they was talking about they had different contributions that we made. They had like the fraternal orders. They had history about that. They had history about the 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 towns that they founded out west.
You
They
told
had
them
that.
about your family,
Yeah.
about the Lyle.
Yeah, they had something about the Greenwood bombing, but then they had a big exhibit about the Lyle Station, this place in Indiana called Lyle Station, and my last name is Lyles, and I don't know if they're related to me, but I'm gonna do some more investigation. But apparently, it was a self-made town that they made. They looked like they kind of was maybe mulattoes and some black people, but they made their own train depot and everything, and it was very prosperous. It was in the state of Indiana, and it must have been a pretty big deal. They had everything. It was another. So Greenwood, and Tulsa, Oklahoma was not the only towns that we had. We had towns all over this nation, and apparently Lyle Station was one of them. And it talked, but the Greenwood exhibit that's really upsetting when you look at it. I took a lot of pictures of that, and the aftermath of it. They show you these postcards that these people made out of the destruction. They made postcards with pictures of the destruction they had done to the black town and mailed it around.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, who does that kind of stuff, man? I mean, and then how they couldn't really get no help. They couldn't really get any. I think when Obama came in office and they had tried to bring a case against them. Finally, I think it was in 2008 or something like. Oh no, Obama wasn't in office. Let me take that back. It was 2003 that they tried to bring a suit against Tulsa and the state of Oklahoma, but the federal court said the statute of limitations had ran out.
Yeah.
Now you tell somebody in World War II, that was in the Nazi, hey, the statute of limitations. What you think they're gonna say? But they did that to our people. So in the exhibit they had something about reparations, something, and I was thinking, I said, yeah, reparations now. They owe us the amount of money that they owe us is incalculable. But even if they don't, the evidence is there that proves that we do deserve reparations as a people. There's no doubt about it.
And they also didn't forget about the era that we lived in, the 80s.
Yeah, it talks about all the different eras.
With the rappers and the DJs.
That was the fifth floor.
Yeah.
That was the final floor.
What's the one about that beach that black people went back then? Old Town, back in the days. Very expensive beach.
Oh, that was on the fourth.
That?
No, that was it the fifth floor or fourth floor?
Fourth.
Yeah, there was somewhere in Martha's Vineyard where black people could go to Martha's Vineyard, but they had their own place in Martha's Vineyard, and this is where the black elite went to.
Right.
This is where the black elite, like Clayton Powell, Adam Clayton Powell, and the elite, the Boulay County type people. That's where they had their own little place that they went and they strategized and whatever. The fourth and fifth floors, had like popular culture and this some of the things like dancing. They talked about different things that we, arts. It's like our arts. Fifth floor is sports. It has a lot of sports figures: Michael Jordan, Jesse Owens,
and I noticed
Bob Beamon in the Olympics.
I noticed the white people felt comfortable going on that floor where the music was. They were just like amazed with like.
It was kind of lighting up from the first two floors. It was kind of
just made them feel comfortable. Us dancing and singing and all. Yeah. It's like it's more to us.
But it did talk about urban, the urban life. How when we got to the cities, how it changed us. In the exhibition about rap, it talked about the 80s, how the rap music came about because of the poor conditions. They was rapping about the conditions it was waiting for them to let off steam without killing and fighting and stuff like that. They could rap battle, and it was very, me and Mars, we grew up in that, so we know a little bit about it, but it's to see it has brought back memories. Also, like I said, the sports figures and just the, how when we entered into different genres, how we changed it. When we got into football, it changed. When we got into basketball, it changed. When we got into golf, track, whatever, it changed for the better. It was like boom, we there. Then now it's so much more. We elevated it. This is why we know we are the people. But then also, what we understand is we gotta look to what's the next level for us. What's the next step for us? Are we just content just to be contributors, or do we want to be our own, have our own thing?
about an exhibit about the red Cadillac.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was such a big deal back in the
Yeah,
50s.
yeah. They had
And
the
I made
actual
it,
Chuck
yeah,
Berry's Cadillac.
yeah, and I made it. It's
Yeah,
like,
they made it. They gave it. They showed it. It got this actual Cadillac there,
yeah,
but they had different. I think that was the fifth floor. That
they
was
had
the,
Little Richard
yeah,
sequence jacket, and they
yeah.
had
The fifth
my
floor had a lot
favorite
of
Duke Ellington,
yeah.
my favorite area of
It
jazz,
had a
yeah,
lot of
Louis
stuff there.
Armstrong, trumpet,
Musicians.
yeah,
It had
Donna Ross with Billy D picture on
mm,
there.
yeah. It had the Jeffersons.
Oh
They
yeah,
had costumes, actual costumes from a lot of shows that
and they
we
had
grew up
the
watching.
Wiz, the Tin
Yeah,
Man, and
yeah.
Dorothy's real dress.
They had song from
Authentic,
James Brown.
yes.
They had uh,
Joe,
they had
Joe Lewis.
they had like musical instruments with different musicians that donated.
Mhm.
Harry Hancock and Stanley Clark. They had his bass guitar.
Mhm.
They had some exhibit about John Coltrane and
Patti LaBelle in her outfit.
yeah. They had a lot of lot of stuff. And I said, well, about us being contributors, but we ourselves overall not benefiting from. When you see all that we contributed, and then to see the condition overall that we're in, I'm not saying that some of us are not doing well, but for us not to have our own overall have more businesses and stuff than what we used to have, is kind of sad, to understand how much money we have generated for this nation and how much
And as
stuff we have contributed that made life better. They
mm,
had the guy that made the gas mask. They had the
mhm.
actual gas mask. I forgot his name now. Uh, Garrett.
Garrett.
Garrett T. Morgan. Yeah, they had his actual gas mask, and they talked about how he put the mask on himself and went into the coal mine and saved the man and showed them, hey, this mask can save y'all. I mean, all this kind of stuff that changed, made life better. His mask saved millions and millions of lives when World War One rolled around and they was using poison gas.
Mhm.
His mask saved millions of lives.
Mhm.
Do you,
Our
no,
contribute transformed the world.
yeah,
And I remember we were leaving the museum, and I was feeling good and everything. It didn't take my joy away, but it kind of took me for a loop. This lady come out, yeah, now they got food stamps, and I'm like, what? She just saw
yeah,
all of that,
yeah,
all greatness,
yeah,
and that's all she could say.
yeah.
They'll have to keep you
And
down.
I'll be honest with y'all, when the lines got on, when we came back the second day and there was so many people in there, the first thought came to my mind, and I know it's probably gonna be like I gotta be careful what I say, but I was like, if I wanted to say to the museum staff, if they ain't black, tell everybody else they gotta go. This museum is for our viewing first, and then everybody else second. But I knew that
It's just the
that's
way
not
you
the way. But that's
felt.
the way I
Yeah.
felt. I was
Yeah.
like, man, there's so many people in here. We,
Let us
some of
enjoy
us,
it. Yeah.
some people might have came from all different part of the country, and now this might be their last day, and they can't go through the exhibit because there's so many people. I said, let everybody else that's not black, you gotta get out, and then let them go through, and then if it's some time left, then you can go through. That's just the way I felt, because I think that every black person that can needs to make a trip there and go through all the floors and see the grieve on the first and second floor and the third, but as you get up to the fourth and fifth floor, see the achievements and understand, hey man, we come from greatness, man.
Yeah.
We and what we are still yet doing right now. You see,
Mhm.
and be inspired, and bring your kids, and let them see what
There's
we
more
came
to
here
this.
as and what we ended up as.
There's more to just rapping.
Yeah, yeah, we
contribute
a whole lot to this nation,
this nation.
and still are contributing a lot to this nation.
Like my husband said, there was a lot of people that traveled from a long way.
Yes.
It was a group with Issachar and his family.
Yeah, we got to see. We met Dwayne, and we didn't meet his wife because she was back in the back somewhere. But we got to meet him. He's much
Very
bigger
nice.
in person.
Yes, he is.
He is a tall guy. He's he's not. When I say big, I'm not meaning like he overweight. I mean he's big. He's built almost like kind of tall like a basketball player.
Yeah.
Kind of like he can handle himself.
I think
So,
they even had somebody come from what?
Yeah, I think his group.
Denver.
Yeah, he had somebody that came from Colorado. Now he came our third day was his first day.
Mm-hmm.
Day group's first day, and what we got to go to the Washington. No, we didn't get to go to the Washington Monument or Jefferson Memorial, but we did get to go to the Lincoln. We didn't go up into we didn't go up into the Washington Monument. We walked up to it, but we didn't go inside. We but we did go to the Lincoln Memorial. We went to that. We went past that little pool. So I got in front of the Washington Monument and I prayed against that because I know what it means. The obelisk means. Mm-hmm. It's a sign of Egypt. It's a sign of our oppression, and it's just funny that they had it. They built the African American Museum. It in the shadow of the African American Museum is the Washington Monument, showing you that they know the significance of that we are still in Egypt. Now, I like what Issachar and his group did. They went up to the Washington Monument, and you need to watch the video.
Yes.
And they prayed against the contracts and stuff that we have done with this nation, and said that we want to be equal and that we just want to get in, and he prayed against all this stuff. And you need to watch that video. It's really good, and the prayer that they recited on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial is something. Now, next time that we do go to Washington, we're gonna go to the Capitol building. We're gonna go to the White House. We might go to the Jefferson Memorial if it's open. They thought they was renovating it. And we're gonna do some prayer. We gotta break this whole stronghold that's on us, because we had 400 years. We had a standstill. We're gonna go down or we're gonna go up. We can't stay where we're at right now. We can't. And after seeing that and seeing what we've done, I know the only problem is we can't come together. But I think that's the Most High Yah. He only wants a certain group of people coming out of this captivity. Mm-hmm. Because we can rise to high heights. But I was thinking to myself, Most High Yah wouldn't have let all that happen to us unless we had been very sinful people.
Right.
Because when you seen the stuff that they did to us, Most High Yah he never is playing, but he wasn't playing with us when he told us you gonna pay. Oh, yeah. When he said don't weep for me, he said weep for yourself. Mm-hmm. We should have been listening, because I'm telling you, it wasn't no joke when you go see some of the stuff that them slaves went through. Mm-hmm. And then even we was looking at something the other day about this lynching of this black man in I forgot what part of the South, but anyway, how they had burnt his body, but they actually was taking pieces of his flesh and eating it, or they was calling it jerky. And how they was cutting parts of his body apart and selling it for souvenirs. Mm-hmm. And this is going on with thousands and thousands of people, men, women, and their children was being thrown to alligators. But I said, man, it's a frightful thing to fall in the hands of an angry Elohim. When you deny his son, mm-hmm. When you understand what we did, that's why we gotta repent and ask the Most High, y'all, please forgive us. Please, cleanse us and help us to come up out of this situation that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
We did all this stuff under slavery. Now imagine if we were free and we had our own man. We would rise in higher heights and deeper depths in Yeshua. And that's what we looking for. We looking to do that, but he said you gotta repent. And he said he gonna bring the two sticks together. He said he gonna bring it, but he ain't just gonna bring any people together, right? But when he does bring the group of us from the diaspora and us that's in Africa still, woo, buddy, you hear me? You already see some of the African people that's coming over here into England and the experiments and stuff where they got children that's 7 to 8 years old as college students and PhDs. Huh? What? Listen to me. And then you see the stuff that we done, you can see. You even like the banjo. It showed the banjo. It told the truth about the banjo. We created that banjo, the guitar, the I forgot what, it's some kind of thing. All kinds of stuff that we done. We done that under oppression.
Yes.
I'll let my wife.
I want to share to the guy that got hung. He was dating this white lady, and then they went up north.
No, they went to St. Louis.
Oh,
Nah, that's Midwest.
Well, they went Midwest, and then for some reason he came back home.
For some reason.
And
to Mississippi.
They was saying that he had raped her.
Yeah, when he got back.
So
even though she was in her 20s.
So they hung him, and they made a big
announcement. 10,000 people.
10,000 people there.
Came. They printed in the newspaper.
And when they found him, what was left had 1,000 bullets in his body.
They shot. No, when he was hanging on the tree.
Yeah.
They used him for target practice, and they shot 10,000 bullets into his body. Then they burned him, and then that's when they burned his flesh, and they cut pieces of flesh off and ate it or sold it and kept it for souvenirs. Yeah, so it's a terrible thing to fall in the hands of an angry Yah. We gotta repent. We gotta turn away all this stuff that we're doing. We gotta turn around, or he'll let it come back. Yeah. He can. When after slavery, man, we was doing great things. Then they did away with that. But then during Jim Crow, we started doing stuff, but then that went away. Those towns got destroyed or whatever. So it can happen again. It can. So we just better be prayerful. Go to the museum. It'll inspire you, and also inspire you to say, "Yeah, it's our time. We want to get back, and we want to stay at that great point." That's what the encouragement I got from going there. Is that I don't want it to be a past thing. I want it to be a future and higher. I don't know where that's gonna be. I know it's not gonna be in this land. It can't. But I don't know where it's gonna be. But go there. You'll enjoy it.
You'll definitely love it and be inspired, and it's just like I can't think of her name when she said, "We rise and we rise, we rise." Maya Angelou. You get stomped down, you rise and stomp again, and we keep rising and rising. It's just a miracle, all the stuff that we have came through.
And one of the things my wife stated, and I believe it too, is when you look on TV at Washington D.C. at the different monuments, it looks so, well, at least from the TV it looks bright. But what I told my wife was, when you looking at D.C. through the eyes of those that used us to build this country, it looks grand. But when you the person that was enslaved and beat and to look at it when you actually come and see that darkness that you see on it is the tears and the sadness and stuff of our people that built the White House, that built the Capitol building, that built the Washington Monument, that built all those monuments under slavery. So no, that's why it doesn't have that bright appeal or whatever, because we have never fully, never, neither has it ever, never, and neither was it ever told us that we would fully reach the whatever freedom that this country spelled out in the Constitution. Because when it started out, the Constitution was against us. So it's ingrained in that we will never reach that level. We want, because this is not our final destination. It's not. And so with that, I would just say one more thing. The it was, as for the outside of the cafeteria, one of the places, and this might help you if you want to, eat outside the D.C., because D.C. is actually connected to Virginia and Maryland. You drive in and out. We went to a place called Crystal City, Virginia, which is right outside of D.C., and there was some pretty decent restaurants there that we went to eat at. The ones where we was at, we was over there near the George Washington area, where they had some embassy, different European embassies, and these high class. I guess it would be considered to be the business district, because on K Street you seen all these banks and stuff like that, and you seen a lot of restaurants, foreign restaurants and stuff like that. Where we was at, it was too expensive to eat there, way too expensive. When me and my son, when we went driving, we had to drive to go to a Burger King. We had to go way, way away. They don't, you're not, it's expensive. It actually around the corner from the hotel where we was at. They had Bobby Frey. I guess he one of them guys on the Food Network or whatever. He had one of his restaurants. And so we was looking at trying to find the prices, and they didn't have the prices on it. So you know what that meant. If you gotta ask what price it is, you can't afford it. So that's all we got. My wife, I let her in out.
The last night we were there, I had a bad dream, but I think we'll share it on another day. It was something else.
That area is the whole, especially that area where we was at. It's some weird stuff that goes on, and you could tell that area. And I told my wife, I said, we probably walking past millionaires as we speak, because even though Washington D.C. is small, it's very expensive to live there. Only the really rich can, afford. They pushing all the people out. We actually did go into the hood by accident. We didn't try to. We went through Southeast, but man, we tried to get out of there as quick as we can, because it was police everywhere. It was something going on, and you could tell if DC, with all the stuff that's going on there, there's probably high level witches that's just praying death and destruction down. Listen to me, and that's another reason why everything looked dark. And you need to watch some of Issachar's videos about it. They're real good. And he talks about the symbols and symbolism. And it is Washington D.C. is one of America's high places. Let's just say that.
Yes.
You go into the Bible and he talks about the high places, how Solomon couldn't get rid of the high places.
Yes.
D.C. is a high place. Let's just put it that way. And there's a lot of stuff that's going on. That's why my wife had that dream that she had, because we were surrounded by some crazy stuff. Even the hotel that we was in, when we walked into it, I was like, man, I'm like, we'll talk about that later. But I want you to share this video. I want you to like, and I want you to subscribe.
Yeah.
Now, as I stated on one of my videos that I uploaded, I don't know if my channel is going to survive because it's not got a lot of subscribers and it's not making any money. And on the 10th of December, YouTube has said that they're going to start taking down either videos or whole channels that's not making money, because apparently they know they seeing the effectiveness of black people on social media, and that's one of the ways that they're going to try to do away with that. So if it, well, yeah, but everybody know that YouTube is the best platform, because when you talk about some of these other ones like the BitChute, is only so much minutes that you can get there, and people not, and it's not the same. YouTube is probably the most effective. But I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if it's the Most High Yah will, it's going to, but I'm just letting you know it could come down because it's not, and I guess they probably saying, hey, we got, we got so much internet, whatever, we want to keep the money makers on here, so just remember that. I'm up to 14 subscribers, which to me is amazing, but that's not enough. They want thousands, millions, so they can get those commercials out there. So
please subscribe.
Okay.
I was really know what he does.
All right.
He really does.
And make it to the museum. All right. All right. Be blessed.